And we're really at this intersection, between of inventing a new category with commerce media, which I think could be deemed the third wave of digital. Last year, a few years have been incredibly exciting because of the launch of retail media and just how much momentum that business has had. And we're really at this intersection, between of inventing a new category with commerce media, which I think could be deemed the third wave of digital. You have search with Meta being to bring that. You had, search with Google, social with Meta, and now commerce media is this new wave. And it's really the intersection between what I'll call performance marketing, between customer acquisition and customer retention, bringing new customers into my store and retaining the ones I have. But then with retail media, it is really about, for the brands to be about, how do I interact with those customers? How do I make sure that I'm along the discovery journey for commerce? So it's incredibly exciting to be a part of it. There's a tremendous amount of momentum. There's a tremendous amount of interest. And Criteo, we're very fortunate to be in the center of it.
Yeah, I mean, there's been lots of change happening in the retail media space, especially since the pandemic. I think that's fair to say. And generally, why and how are brands getting into retail media, do you think?
Well, I think there's two reasons. One is the invention of retail media. To your point in the pandemic, what happened there was all of a sudden our world changed. And for retailers, they had to reinvent their business. If they didn't have an e-commerce practice, they had to bring one to life. And that's an expensive proposition. When you think about it, it adds an additional layer of cost, infrastructure to be able to support that. At the same time, it opened up a tremendous amount of opportunity, because for a retailer, their traditional business certainly hasn't been as a media provider. But in this new world, a retailer has these new world to be able to put placements on their site or on their email distribution, to be able to monetize digital the same way a publisher would. So suddenly for a brand, I'm able to enter into the conversation at the point of discovery. And by that, what I mean is, if someone's on a retail site and they're spending time with it, there's a level of intent. But when I'm there, the customer experience is probably more important than anywhere else for both the retailer and the brand. Because if something shows up that's not authentic, it's not real, that disrupts that experience, it completely throws off both the consumer and the retailer. And for Criteo, our ambition has always been to be the ad tech provider for retail. And by that, what I mean is, how do we enable them to build these retail businesses? And that can be everything, because there's this maturity cycle that goes along with it, which is, what is the ad tech? What's the billing methodology? What's the sales strategy, the marketing components? The same thing that we would have in a digital world if I were a media company. So I think, for brands, and the best thing for brands, the one thing that they latch onto that they absolutely love is this idea of measurement, because they can see in real time exactly the value of their media placements, and to be able to track that to sales directly in a real-time fashion. For us, it's about a 4-hour loop in terms to get that feedback data back, which allows them to be able to optimize their media budgets probably more effectively than any other tactic in the marketplace, which is incredibly exciting.
Well, you were talking about the maturity of retail media. Obviously, I think Deliveroo is one of the newest entrants to this. What does Deliveroo retail media have to offer?
For Deliveroo, it's the ability to invite brands into their environment, whether it be the app, whether it be email, whatever their distribution mechanisms may be for non-restaurants. So when you think about that, this is all of a sudden, for a brand, I've got this amazing new media tactic that comes to play, again, at the point of discovery. And Deliveroo is, I think for them as an organization, they've jumped both feet into the water. This is something that's incredibly important for them. They've got ambitious plans to do it. And we're excited to it.
You mentioned some ambitious plans. Can you tease any of those, or what's in the eye line for the next year or so?
If you look at it this way, I think in the UK alone, the numbers that I've seen most recently is, I think the expectation is retail media to be a $6 billion market in the UK. And Deliveroo, I think, is one of the early entrants at scale to be able to take advantage of that. And I'm sure from their point of view, they want to capture as much of that as they possibly can.
What other brands or sectors could or even should get involved in retail media in the future, do you think?
So you start with the large, again, anybody who's got a physical location or a large online marketplace, those are traditionally the first entrance to the space. And I think it's different. The difference that I've seen in the UK and EMEA, different from the US, feels like the first entry point has been around display advertising rather than sponsored ads, which in the US and other markets has been the entry point. So I think you're going to see display it's the media type that they're coming into. I think you'll see display, then I think you'll see sponsored ads, and then I think you'll see offsite capabilities as well. So it goes back to this idea or concept of how do I build it out. But we've got some great partners in the market that we certainly work with, that we're excited about. Obviously Carrefour, Asda, and others. So I think you'll continue to see that scale. And again, with $6 billion at play, it's certainly a market that I think every retailer, regardless of size, is thinking about.
And what do you think in the next year? What are the big changes on the horizon?
I think it's probably threefold, right? So let's go for each part of it. I think for the agencies, right? Agencies are building out their practices, right? So how do they deal with commerce media? How do they deal with retail media? Because suddenly now they have to build the staff internally to be able to deal with this. And I think in the past, the numbers that we have seen is in 2022 or 21, I think it was the average media plan had maybe 4 retail networks on it. This year, it's going to expand to 8. So there's fragmentation in the marketplace, and I think there's a need to be able to simplify that from an agency standpoint and build that out. From a retailer standpoint, I think it's the idea or the concept of where do I begin for some, right? How do I start? For those who are more mature, it's how do I increase this revenue line? Because suddenly, as it scales, it begins to rise up within the corporate environment. By that, what I mean is you now see some of the largest companies reporting their media activation numbers because it's that significant to the organization, because it's a revenue driver for them that allows to offset costs. So I think you'll see offsite capabilities. I think you'll see more around sponsored ads to see that evolution. And then for the brands, I think the brands are going to look at this. The biggest thing that they're asking for that we'll continue to see is measurement capabilities. And I mentioned that closed the reporting loop that we had initially, which was traditionally around that online store. I think more and more you're seeing an ask to say, hey, listen, I don't only want to know what it does online. I want to see what it does offline as well. So I think you'll see measurement capabilities in that entire practice expand to not only do online, but to do offline as well.